Hypothetically speaking, if you were tasked with getting rid of one weight class in the UFC, which one would you pick? You had to get rid of one. What would it be? Now, for me personally, it would be the 125-pound weight class, and for no other reason than they are the smallest guys. That is the only reason. And Demetrious Johnson was one of my favourite fighters. But I have to be honest and say, without him in that division, I kind of stopped watching it. The only reason I watched the flyweight class, the only reason I watched the flyweights is because of him, right? I'm just going to be honest. And you can maybe argue Henry Cejudo as well after he beat Demetrious Johnson, mind you. Because don't forget, Demetrious Johnson beat Henry Cejudo the first time they fought with relative ease. First round TKO, I believe it was. But when Henry Cejudo beat Demetrious Johnson after his 14th or 15th title defense or something ridiculous, to me, it kind of fizzled out in terms of excitement. And I didn't even really pay too much attention to the 135-pound weight class either, right? The guys that were above flyweights, the bantamweight class. I mean, the only person that I could think of who was somewhat of a star, I don't really like using that term because I think it puts people on a pedestal. But a big name, let me say it that way, a big name in that weight class was TJ Dillashaw. Right? Dominic Cruz. Those were the big names in that division. You can put Uriah Faber in there as well. I don't think he ever actually touched the UFC belt, but he was a Hall of Famer. He is a Hall of Famer. Right? He's a big name in that weight class. Who else? I know you have people like Aljamain Sterling, who's in there right now. Can't really think of any other big names off the top of my head. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any. Oh, Sugar Sean O'Malley, obviously. But again, not too many big names in that weight class. It's not an extremely deep division. I preferred watching Demetrious Johnson over all of those guys. So when Demetrious Johnson lost and he went over to ONE FC, was traded for Ben Askren, I kind of forgotten who was there. And I'm not saying this in a horrible way. Demetrious Johnson, right, especially, would terrorize me in a fight. This is not to say that those guys aren't skilled and can't fight. Most of those guys in that weight class would need very little effort to beat me in a fight, right? And I've been training since 2014, taking a couple of years off here and there. So overall, I've been training MMA for 9 years, but I'm 6'2.5". I walk around currently at about 187 pounds, right? About 85, 86 kilos. But for sure, Demetrious Johnson especially would have no issues taking me out in a fight. My size advantage wouldn't even be apparent. It would be almost as if I had no advantage if me and him were to fight. That's how dominant it would be, right? Give credit to where credit is due. Not worshipping the guy, right? He's just a man, just like everybody else in this world. We are people. But you have to give credit where credit is due. He would take me out. It would be terrible for me if me and him fought, along with many of the flyweights. So this isn't about saying that they're not skilled and they can't fight. I'm just saying if you had to choose, which weight class would it be? Some of you may think differently. And that's the thing. When Demetrious Johnson lost to Henry Cejudo, he lost his championship belt. He got traded for Ben Askren, went over to ONE FC. And you could argue that Henry Cejudo stole some of his star power. And when I say stole, I don't mean Demetrious Johnson lost any stock value really, because he went over to ONE FC obviously and continued to progress his career and had a successful time over there. But Henry Cejudo's stock obviously went up. I mean, even gaining the championship belt at any weight class comes with its own merits, doesn't it? If you're the champion of 125 pounds in the UFC, that's something. But the fact that he beat Demetrious Johnson added something extra to his stock, for sure. And obviously he went on to even capture the 135-pound belt after that, when he faced TJ Dillashaw. I'm mixing those two up, actually. TJ Dillashaw came down to fight him and he beat him. So in a sense, you could say, oh yeah, he beat the 135-pound champ who was at the time. But even then, he did went on to fight, and I'm forgetting one of the names. I believe it was Morales. Right? Henry Cejudo captured the 135-pound belt anyway. So he was a 2-weight division champion. Started calling himself Triple C from the time he became an Olympic wrestling champion, an Olympic gold medalist. So after the Henry Cejudo era, I kind of stopped watching and paying attention to the flyweights, if I'm being honest. So that's the division I would have to get rid of if I was tasked with such a job and it had to be done. I mean, what do you guys think?